Hello, everyone. I think we're about to start. Thank you. So, I'd like to say, first of all, welcome to our Action Hub event. I'm Richard Vevers, and I run the not-for-profit, the Ocean Agency. And we spend a lot of our time working on coral reefs, and we're particularly well known for our work revealing the impacts of climate change on coral reefs, especially with the Netflix documentary, Chasing Coral. And we're hosting this event with the UN Environment Programme. And what we wanted to do is not focus on the doom and gloom. There is so much doom and gloom when it comes to coral reef storytelling that we want to really flip the narrative and focus on the positive. So really focus on what's being done to solve this issue and really focus on the reefs that we can potentially save, especially the reefs on the doorstep of this COP here, the Great Fringing Reef. Now, we've split the event into two parts. The first part really is going to be starting off with Inga Andersen, Executive Director of the UN Environment Programme. Thank you very much for being here. She's going to have some introductory remarks. And then we're very proud to have Ellie Goulding, the UN Environment Programme Goodwill Ambassador, who recently came and joined us on expedition out to see the reefs. And we've got a film that we're premiering here. Just a very short film, and then she's going to say some remarks of personal experience about the trip. And then we're going to have a little panel discussion with another person that we had to make time for, with Pugh, who's just swum across the Red Sea. And we've got Susan Gardner, who's Director of the Ecosystem Division at UN Environment Programme. So we'll kick off. We have a very tight schedule, so if we can kick off with Inga, that would be great. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I invite you to take a trip with me. I invite you to go far into the atmosphere. I invite you on my rocket. And as you travel out, I invite you to look through that little window in your rocket ship, and you look back at this little blue marble. That little blue marble is what we're talking about today. That blue marble that gives us life, that blue marble that is amazing, that blue marble that we are seeking to protect while we are here at COP27, and that blue marble that when we dive under, we see the wonder, we see the magic, and we see something that we could not possibly imagine when we were above ground. It is also our only blue marble. It does have bits of green on it, however, which is where we live. But understanding the fragility of this blue marble and understanding the imperative of protecting it could not be more important. And so when we know that there are people who step up because of the love of the oceans, because of the love of the planet, we have to hear their voices. And so we at the United Nations Environment Programme are incredibly proud to have such absolutely outstanding Goodwill ambassadors in the form of Ellie Goulding, in the form of Pugh, who are in their worlds doing amazing things and lifting into their worlds the world of environment. Ellie, your world and your voice is something that carries with beauty and with influence, and we are so thankful for all that you do. And Louis, the very fact that you endeavored and you dared to set that challenge to swim across the Red Sea, one of the busiest straits of the world, with tankers and traffic and complexity of geopolitical dimensions, and you made it, is just absolutely outstanding. Do check their Twitter feeds, because both of these remarkable people are doing absolutely remarkable work. Now, I have to give a little bit of science because we are a science agency. And so I do want you to know, and that unfortunately is a little bit of doom and gloom, but that is why we are going to flip this. But look, right now we are heading to a 2.8 degree world. That's where our current policies are taking us. And we know that at a 2-degree world, actually, there are practically no more coral reefs. And we understand that a 1.5 degree coral reefs, 50 to 70%, 1.5 degree increase, 50 to 70% are in fact endangered. And we get that oceans warming is a real problem, and we understand oceans acidification. And that is why these efforts to protect these oceans is so critical, not just for their beauty, but also for their beauty, but also because when we protect the oceans, we are protecting ourselves. We're protecting the livelihoods of people who rely on the oceans for their economy and their livelihoods. We're protecting the species, but we are also protecting the coral reefs, the sand dunes, the estuaries, the coastal forests, all of which provide protection for us. When the storms come, when the high floods come, they break the winds, they break the waves, they absorb the high winds. That is what the mangroves and other ecosystems do for us. So this event will be about solutions. This event will be about the positive. That's why you are here. And let me once more, as I close out, express my deep thanks to these remarkable people who are stepping up. They need not do this. They have their own careers, but they're giving up themselves for the greater good and the greater good of the oceans, and indeed the greater good of that little blue marble. Thank you so much.
Yes, and now we're just going to play the video that was shot about a month ago when Ellie came and joined us on an expedition on the reef.
The coral reefs here in the Egyptian Red Sea are very special. When I heard about them and what they've come to symbolize, I really wanted to come and see them for myself.
You forget that coral reefs have been around for 500 million years.
Yeah, so cool.
You can see corals in amongst the stones, like this one. These are all the holes for all the tiny little animals, the little polyps. They clone themselves and they're turning seawater into stone. And they're using the sun's energy to do that.
So cool. Yeah. Coral reefs are considered one of the most valuable and biodiverse ecosystems on the planet. They support hundreds of thousands of species. They also provide food and jobs for hundreds of millions of people in some of the world's poorest communities. Why does every degree matter when it comes to climate targets?
What science tells us is if our global temperature rises by 1.5 degrees Celsius, we will likely lose between 70 and 90% of our coral reefs. At 2 degrees, it is projected to be 99%.
Why is this one looking so healthy?
This is potentially the most climate-tolerant reef in the world. Located in the coolest part of the Red Sea, but the currents bring coral babies from one of the hottest parts of the Red Sea.
Okay.
So they keep some of their climate tolerance when they settle here. And then you also get very deep water that washes through and cools down.
These reefs are located on the doorstep of this year's UN Climate Conference, and their survival, and potentially the survival of the entire ecosystem, could be riding on the outcome of the conference.
That was honestly one of the greatest experiences of my life. It was like entering a whole other universe. The sheer beauty of it. How can you not want to save that once you've seen it, once you've experienced it? So yeah, I do think every single person that is involved in changing policy for the better should see this.
Humanity has never been on the verge of losing an entire ecosystem before, but we've also never had the opportunity to save one either. We just need to honour the commitment to limit global warming to well under 2 degrees Celsius and to prioritise support for the local action to save coral reefs. So come on, let's get on with it. What are we waiting for?
Good morning. Can you hear me? Yes, now. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here. It means a lot because coral reefs really do mean everything, as we'll discover. As you saw in that film, they made me say one of my own lyrics, by the way. That wasn't my idea. That cringed me out a bit. I was lucky enough to see these incredible corals. And a lot of people have asked me, what was it like? It's really difficult to describe just how incredible it was. It's such a profound experience, but I will try. There's this sheer visual beauty, and when you peer through your mask and witness this brilliant cornucopia of marine life, you feel as if all life is swimming in front of your eyes. And it reminded me that coral covers just a tiny percentage of the sea floor, but it supports a quarter of all known marine species. There's a stronger feeling that goes deeper than that beauty. You can feel the pulsating force of a life, of an ecosystem supporting hundreds of thousands of species, but also this amazing continuity that's not surprising given coral reefs have been around for 500 million years. I feel like it was almost like a magical connection. The short version is that experiencing this reef gave me an unmediated, direct encounter with nature. And I feel like those are hard to get and extremely precious, and I feel very grateful. So I would say to you all, please experience this reef for yourself if you haven't already. It will remind you of two things. Firstly, that the existence of these coral reefs that have been around for 500 million years is in your hands. And as the IPCC tells us, at 1.5 degrees of warming, 70 to 90% of all reefs will be lost. And at 2 degrees, we lose 99%. So what is decided here makes the difference. The second thing to bear in mind is that this is one of the most climate-tolerant reefs in the world, and it just happens to be at your feet, right here in Sharm el-Sheikh. And this is no ordinary reef, as we know. I mean, all reefs are pretty extraordinary, but this one, it's one of nature's great survivors, and it could be the key to regenerating other reefs in the future. Do you ever think the biosphere might be sending us a message? It also provides a much-needed reminder that there is no separation between us and natural systems. If they fail and we don't protect them, then we fail. We need this wake-up call urgently because we're continuing to get it wrong, very wrong. For evidence, we only need to look right here at COP. I'm sorry to put a down on it, but over 600 lobbyists from fossil fuel industries registered to attend this COP, and they were accepted. And that's more than any national delegation from the African continent, despite this being the African COP. Why do we let this happen? It just drives us in the wrong direction, I think. So let me tell you what I think is cool and clever. It's a plan to save corals that we're showcasing today. It's built on the passionate work of organizations here in Egypt who have fought so hard to protect the Great Fringing Reef. And I want to thank those organizations, actually, especially Green Fins, for letting me get involved. This plan brings together great global organizations like UNEP and provides the science and direction and people who have dedicated their lives to chasing coral, like you, Richard. It should impress everyone. This plan has all the right ingredients. It harnesses science, technology, innovation, and local on-the-ground knowledge and support. And it's just incredibly cool. It gives us collectively the opportunity to flip from being the generation that drives ecosystems to the brink of destruction to the one that takes action to save them. Nobody wants to be the first to destroy an entire ecosystem, but we all want to be part of the group that saves it. Imagine how that would feel. In order to unlock that opportunity, we need to invest in nature. It's time to fund these precious ecosystems. We know there's a huge gap. Global investment in coral reefs is insultingly small. Less than 0.01% of climate finance from development banks between 2010 and 2015 went to coral reefs, which is nothing. And it's not just insulting, but it's not cool. It's just not impressive. Because coral reefs are truly one of our biggest assets, as you can see, and with the best return. So on behalf of the global community, I would like to ask the Egyptian government to take every action possible to protect this reef, building on all the work that's already been done. And I would ask the global community of leaders to acknowledge that coral reefs are one of our greatest collective assets, and to get seriously, seriously ambitious and competitive about funding restoration and protection. We have an ambitious and workable plan and an amazing climate-tolerant reef, so let's just go for it, because we know when we invest in nature, it's just a win for all of us. Thank you.
And thank you very much for those words, Ellie. I'd like to say, just a personal thank you on behalf of everyone working in coral reef conservation. I mean, I've been working coral reef conservation for over 10 years, and I don't remember a major celebrity ever getting behind the cause, which seems shocking, bearing in mind the scale of the issue. So thank you for this and championing the mission to save coral reefs. Now, we've now got a new switch onto a little sort of reef-side chat, as we're calling it. We've got a beautiful shot that we took here about a month ago of the reef right here on the doorstep. And we've got Susan Gardner and Lewis, who are going to be just chatting about sort of their experience of the reefs and what we need to do to save them. So maybe I'll actually kick off with Lewis, just because we want to know about this swim. I mean, I was there sort of in the pre-planning stages, but what was it actually like to swim across the Red Sea?
Thank you so much, Richard. It was far more beautiful than I had ever expected and far more challenging than I had ever expected. Let me start with the first and then go on to the second. I mean, swimming through the Ras Mohammed National Park is one of the highlights of my life. So every time I took a stroke, I could see the arid desert, just nothing there. And then you put your head underwater and there is life. And it is just so abundant. And it's the colors which are so dynamic. It's the purples and the yellows and the greens. And then fish, tiny, small goldfish. And then great big parrotfish and just manta rays and sharks. And it was truly, truly amazing. But the most challenging part of it was obviously getting across the shipping lane. So when you go from Ras Mohammed, you've got to get across to the African side, and there's a really big shipping lane there. So all the ships which are going to the Suez Canal and coming from the Suez Canal go across that section. And when you see a tanker coming towards you, you're never sure how easy it is to judge the speed of a tanker. You can obviously see it. It's a really big hunk of metal coming towards you. But what had happened was we had such enormous winds. So for 10 days, the winds were blowing. And the winds were blowing from the side. And so the boat, the driver of the boat, he was trying to keep as far away from me as possible so that he didn't accidentally bring the boat down onto my back. I'm trying to stay as close to the boat as possible because that boat is my safety. And now we've got a ship coming towards us. Anyway, I said to the driver, I said, come on, let's just do it. Let's do it. Because I thought that I had enough time. Anyway, I swam as fast as I could in front of this ship. And what I didn't realize was, so these ships come out of the Suez Canal and they come out in convoy. They're coming out, one after the next after the next. And what I didn't realize was behind that ship was another ship which was overtaking. And so suddenly there I am in the middle of this shipping lane with one ship coming to my right, one ship coming to my left. I look down and underneath me is a shark. And it was like so much stuff all happening at once.
That's an amazing story, and we'll come on to why you actually did this swim in a moment. But Susan, I know, obviously you're head of the ecosystem division at UNEP, but I understand you're from a marine biology background. What made you get into sort of marine biology in the first place, and what's your sort of experience with coral reefs?
So, Richard, how am I supposed to speak after that story about marine biology? I would say the one thing that I can connect to the story that you've just described is my experience as well as when putting my head underwater in the Ras Mohammed. Just unbelievable. At 30 years ago, when I first started to learn to scuba dive, I had this vision of one day being able to dive in the Red Sea, and this week was the first time I had the chance to do it, and I want to thank Ellie for that, because it was your video that inspired me to find some way to create time in this busy schedule to be able to have that experience. It's just amazing. I used to think of coral reefs, I think, when I first started diving, as like Mother Nature's jewelry. You know, it's so spectacular and mesmerizing and sparkly and beautiful. But now, after decades of studying ecosystems and understanding about marine ecology, I know that it's not an accessory, it's an essential part of the ecosystem that is a driver for biodiversity that has so many important impacts for humans and communities.
Well, thank you. And I'll follow up that with another question, just on ecosystems. As, you know, head of ecosystems, there seems to be a shift now to focusing on saving ecosystems as opposed to just individual species. And just if you could maybe talk a little bit about that shift.
Yeah, well, the loss of any species is tragic. But when we lose entire ecosystems, we lose those natural systems, and we lose the impacts and the services that they provide to humanity. So it's essential that we have a much bigger systems way of thinking about it. We heard from the Secretary General at the beginning of the COP that this month, the 8th billion child will be born of our human population. And we owe that 8th billion child everything we can do to ensure that they are able to realize their right to adequate food, their right to a healthy environment. And if we aren't good stewards of these ecosystems, we are not leaving the next generation with as much as we've inherited. And that is our moral requirement as humanity.
I totally agree. Well, Lewis, I've got another question for you. So why on earth did you do this swim? I actually did a little bit of calculation because I struggled to do 30 lengths in a pool. And I worked out he was doing 7,500 odd lengths in high seas with shipping lanes and sharks. So why?
So, Richard, I've been swimming for 35 years. And it's a long time to be swimming. And in that period of time, and I've been very, very lucky to swim in most of the world, I've just seen enormous changes. And I think the really big moment in my life was 2007, where I went to the North Pole to do a swim across the North Pole, so across an open patch of sea, to graphically show world leaders, this place is melting. It's melting so much you can even swim here now. And then fast forward, I've been doing swims in the polar regions, down in Antarctica, and all the way, I even did a swim up on Mount Everest to highlight the impact which the melting glaciers will have on the environment. But last year, I did a swim which really had a big impact on me. I did a swim in Greenland, and it was across the face of a glacier called the el-Sheikh glacier. And I've never ever seen anything like it, because I want you to imagine a long fjord, and at the head of the fjord is an enormous glacier, and that glacier is carving off icebergs, huge icebergs, and those icebergs are a kilometer tall. I mean, it's hard to imagine a kilometer tall iceberg. Anyway, so the fjord is extremely long, and then it's extremely wide. But at the mouth of this fjord, a number of these icebergs were grounded on the seabed. And early one morning, I stood on the edge of this fjord, and I witnessed how one of these icebergs broke away and then started carving. And I literally saw thousands and thousands and thousands of icebergs just pour out of this narrow gap. And within a short period of time, those icebergs were literally 5-10 kilometers out to sea. The next morning, that whole fjord was then chock-a-block full of icebergs again. I then went to Glasgow to COP26, and I stood there, and it was like I was in a parallel universe. So the el-Sheikh glacier is now moving at a speed of 40 meters per day in summer. mean, think about it. It's moving 40 meters per day in summer. I go straight from there to Glasgow, and there I meet political leaders who are saying, I'm going to be making a commitment for 2050 or 2060. I mean, every single year we're seeing more storms, more floods, more droughts. And the harsh reality now is that the glaciers are now moving quicker than our world leaders. And then I hear that the next COP summit is going to be here. And I thought, wow, this is an opportunity now to take people to the two ground zeros of the climate crisis, because I think that ice and coral are the two ground zeros, because you can see it so vividly. In the Arctic, every single year I see glaciers retreating. Every single year I see the sea ice getting thinner and thinner and less. And coral reefs, well, I have done swims over some of the most unbelievably beautiful coral reefs in my life, a true privilege. I've come back later and they're dead. And all that incredible wildlife is gone, has disappeared. And so I said to myself, we need to get people to the promised land. We need to get people across to understand how serious this is. And so I said to my team, I'm going to swim across the Red Sea, right the way across the Red Sea, from one side all the way to the other. And en route, I'll come to Sharm el-Sheikh. And I'll be urging world leaders, please come here and leave the conference and walk out and come and put your heads in the water and see what we risk losing unless we take urgent action. Action now.
Well, fantastic, and thank you for your efforts. And it must have been nice to be in warm water for a change. Yes.
It was, but what astounded me was how challenging warm water actually is as well. So cold water is interesting. So our core body temperature is about 37. So what's our core body temperature? I suddenly had a brain freeze now.
Yes, about 96, 97. I'm in Fahrenheit now.
So it's about 37 degrees. If we go down 2 degrees, we become hypothermic. If we go up 2 degrees, we become hyperthermic. Now, here's the interesting thing. You can go down quite a few degrees. You can go down to almost like 32, 31, you can still survive. You go and you get yourself hypothermic and you go towards 40, you're cooking inside, and it's very, very difficult. And so the warmer the water, you just don't feel as if you've got energy, you just don't have any horsepower in the water. The perfect temperature, Richard, for swimming, 17 degrees centigrade. Not 18, not 16, 17.
Excellent. Well, I'd like to now just switch back to Susan and what can be done, and actually the progress that's being made. Recently, sort of in the last few years, I've seen sort of amazing progress. There's suddenly a global fund for coral reefs, which you can't even imagine that there wasn't one a few years ago. So that's great progress. There's also seems to be great progress in just the plan to save coral reefs and recommendations on policy to get coral reefs prioritised. I'd love you to tell us a bit more about what's actually happening and what we need to happen.
So we need a lot to happen. The Mission Gap Report lays that out for us. It's a comparison of what we've done so far as compared to what we've committed to do under the Paris Agreement. And this Emissions Gap Report, the most recent data, shows that we are behind and that the window is closing. So we need to act very quickly to decarbonize and to invest in nature-based solutions like coral reefs. We need to triple our investments in nature-based solutions by 2030 in order to achieve the full potential of being able to have the help from nature within the time frame while we can still receive it and turn things around. So there's a lot we have to do very quickly. Science is a big part of the solution when it comes to coral reefs. And we need to have really good monitoring and reporting, and this is something that is just in the DNA of scientists in general. Scientists collect data, we report it, and we share it with our other scientific friends to make sure that everybody understands how we can build on each other's work, and that's what we need more of now. We have to ensure that we're working together on sharing this kind of best practices so that we can be more efficient and faster in our responses. We're understanding much better things like how to identify corals that seem to have resilience to climate change, that seem to be a little better able to tolerate it than other species in other parts of the world. And so that's something that as we understand it better, we can use that information in our planning. We can make sure those areas are prioritized, that we really ensure that that is spaces that we hold dear, while we try to figure out how to address the rest of the coral reef that are suffering more rapidly. And looking at where we can create the best protection, and marine protection areas are one of those things that buys us more time as we're trying to get ourselves down to a climate stable world. So all of that together with the finance and the Global Fund for Coral Reefs helps to bring different stakeholders together. It helps to bring the best ideas and the best information towards action now, and that's what we really need.
Well, thank you very much. And I could keep talking to both of you all day about this, but I'm really sorry we've got such limited time. So thank you very much for being part of this discussion. Thank you. And if I could invite Mahmoud and Shannon, wherever you are, just to come to the stage. So, yeah, thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. I'll catch you afterwards. Thank you very much. If you'd like to just take a seat. Yeah. Actually. So this is our sort of an announcement section. And yeah, since we started working in a similar way to Lewis, realizing that there was this reef on the doorstep of COP, we really wanted to make an impact here. And we saw it as a huge opportunity, not just to inspire climate action, but to inspire marine protection. And so we wanted to get it recognized. And one of the best ways to do that is with a Mission Blue Hope Spot. And so we got together with HEPCA, which is one of the biggest NGOs in the Red Sea, doing amazing work to protect this reef. And we applied. And we are here today just to announce that the Great Fringing Reef of the Red Sea is a hope spot, and it's the first hope spot in the Red Sea. So what I'd love you to do is, Shannon, if you could just introduce hope spots and what they achieve.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Richard, Mahmoud. I'm thrilled to be here today. I'm here to talk about hope. Hope for the ocean, hope for the land, hope for the people, and all of the living creatures that call Earth home. Mission Blue's founder, Dr. Sylvia Earle, who some of you might know, she gave a TED Talk in 2009, and her wish was to ignite public support for a global network of marine protected areas to save and restore the blue heart of the planet. And scientists estimate that the ocean produces more than 50% of the oxygen and absorbs more than 30% of the carbon. And this only happens with a living, healthy ocean. It's not just the salt water out in the sea. It's all of the plant life. So as we're sitting here enjoying all these fantastic discussions at COP, we should say thank you, phytoplankton. Thank you, kelp. And as Dr. Earle says, with every drop of water you drink, every breath you take, you are connected to the sea. I'm happy to share that we have 147 hope spots globally, where individuals and communities are coming together and working on a variety of actions to protect and restore their local areas. And we at Mission Blue are shining a spotlight on these communities to give them a seat at the table and to be a voice for the voiceless, the wildlife who aren't here at COP, aren't included in any of the high-level discussions, but are equally important stakeholders and deserve to be represented. It's my honor to share this panel with two of our Hope Spot champions, Dr. Mahmoud Hanafy and Noor Farid with HEPCA, and Richard Vevers with the Ocean Agency. They are doing incredible, amazing work And we look forward to working together in the future to help protect and conserve this amazing reef system that was a work requirement that I had to go diving to experience. So, of course, I did that while I was here, and I'm happy to share that it was incredible. Some of the healthiest reefs I've ever seen and witnessed. And I'd like to end with a quote from Dr. Sylvia Earle. One person can't do everything, but everyone can do one thing. No water, no life, no blue, no green. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Shannon. And it's been a real honor working with Dr. Mahmoud, Professor, should I say, and working with HEPCA. And I would like, Mahmoud, just to talk about the Great Fringing Reef and its importance, and also why it is so resilient to climate change. So, but before I do that, just wanting to mention the word Great Fringing Reef, and probably a lot of you are wondering, why haven't I heard of the Great Fringing Reef? And Mahmoud is going to talk you through the story behind that, but I thought it was great when I heard this concept for the first time. You know, imagine if the Great Barrier Reef didn't have a name, and it was just lots of isolated reefs. We wouldn't want to protect it. So branding of these issues really makes a difference. And it was when I spoke to you for the first time that I really heard about this concept and really fully embraced it. And now that we've got the hope spot for the Great Fringing Reef of the Red Sea and a lot of media interested in it, I think it's amazing what could be achieved from this.
Thank you very much. And I'm really very happy about such achievement for the first time. I think based on more than 50 scientific publications and articles regarding the coral reef of Egypt, all of this concluded that we have could be one of the last refuge of coral reef worldwide. This is a hope for the future. Why we use this title of Great Fringing Reef? It's actually not because of the length of the reef. It's more than 2,000 kilometer length, but at the same time, as could be, or the main reason that could be one of the last refuge of coral reef worldwide, this I think very great. I was like to call it Greatest Fringing Reef, but because I think this, in addition to that, our fringing reef in Egypt, based on all of the scientific publication, we have very good results now that it could be one of the last reef can survive this century, because we'll never ever reach to increase in temperature and water above 2 degrees. This is because of the unique water circulation system, and we have what's called the huge fluctuation in temperature between winter and summer, which can be more than 15 degrees or something like this. So our coral actually are more experienced to the fluctuation in temperature. If we compare this with the tropical coral reef, for example, this is, I think, the main reason why this reef could be one of the last refuge. In addition to that, this coral reef is very, very important, not just for the Egyptian economy, but also for the global economy. It's very important. All of the reef-based business in Europe, for example, they are depending on our reef here. So it's very, very supportive for economy of Europe and Egypt as well. Using the Great Fringing Reef, it could be a brand, actually, and this is something very attractive for also one of the reasons. It can be a brand for, we have a Great Barrier Reef in Australia, and we have here the Great Fringing Reef. This is a type of reef. We have a Great Fringing Reef in Egypt.
I think this, yes. One thing that really caught my attention was when you showed me a map of the currents, and the currents sort of sweeping up one side of the Red Sea and the currents sweeping up the other side, and when they basically mix, they causes upwelling, which causes this area to be cooler in the Red Sea. And then you mentioned also about sort of coral larvae coming from the warmer areas and settling here, and that's why it's so climate tolerant.
Yeah, I think there is a theory that can be some sort of adaptation. At the late of glacial time, Red Sea was like a lake with a high temperature and high salinity. After the reconnection of Red Sea with the Indian Ocean, and the coral larvae started to be, migrate to the Red Sea. They have to pass this barrier with a harsh condition. So they are talking about something like evolution factor, But actually, for me, I don't believe in this actually, because it's very simple. This is not answers why or explain why the difference in bleaching potential between eastern coast and western coast. So I deeply believe in adaptation. Until we can find the gene responsible for heat tolerance, I think I'm very satisfied with it's a matter of acclimatization and adaptation for the physical condition, which is the huge difference or huge fluctuation between seasons in temperature. It gave more experience to coral, and the pattern of water circulation, which is coming from the eastern side, on the eastern side, from south to north, and it changed the direction in the most north Red Sea to change from north to south. This is creating like a turbulence area, a vertical mixing area. So all the time, deep water, cold water coming to the surface and doing some sort of mitigation. Based on a model on the sea surface temperature, some science predicts that we will never reach to be higher than the normal temperature now by 2 degrees. So this is secure our coral in this century.
And when Mahmoud explained all this science to me, I just realized what this was, and it is hope for coral reefs. And so it seems such a logical, almost epitomizing the Hope Spot program. So thank you both for kind of this journey that we've been on this year. Now, unfortunately, again, we've run out of time, and I could have spent ages more sort of chatting to you about this, but we've actually got to race off to another event, which is talking about the Great Fringing Reef at the Egyptian Pavilion. But before I do, just wanted to wrap up with, this is about hope for coral reefs. We're seeing some really amazing progress. We're seeing funding starting to come in. And it's just about turning things like the Hope Spots into actual protection now, and really making sure we're concentrating on these critical ecosystems and doing everything that we can to protect it. So thank you.